I had the day off work today, so I invited my MIL to go for a walk since the weather was nice. She readily agreed, and we were walking through the neighborhood park, enjoying the pleasant sunlight. That's when my husband, Kyle, called me. "There's trouble. It seems Mom has collapsed." "What? Your mother?" What was he talking about? My MIL was right next to me. "Yeah, so I'm heading back to New York for a while." "Oh, I see." While I was confused, my MIL smiled at me and said, "Keep it a secret," putting her index finger to her lips so Kyle couldn't hear. "I'll be back next Tuesday. Talk to you later." Kyle hung up hastily. What on earth was going on? A few days later, Kyle finally returned. "How is your mom doing?" "Well, it seems she's not doing so well." Kyle sat on the couch, looking serious. "It might be that there's only a little time left to spend with her." "I see." Since then, my MIL and I had been in regular contact, preparing for various things. Unaware of this, Kyle muttered, "What a problem," as he started fiddling with his phone. Shortly after that, "Will you marry me?" It was my 5th year in New York, at a 3-star restaurant that I could never have imagined visiting in the past. My boyfriend, whom I met here, proposed to me. Today is the happiest day of my life. I promised myself to live my life with this man. My name is Hannah. After my parents passed away, I moved to New York and started working. I had always been aware that I grew up comfortably in the countryside. So when I first came to New York, I was stunned by the tall buildings and the sheer number of people, and I froze for a while. Being a complete country girl, I had no idea how things worked in the city. Back home, we never locked our doors when going out. Of course, even working in a company was something I was initially not used to, and I made many mistakes. "Hannah, what was your first job?" "I was a clerk at a commercial company." There were hardly any places that would hire a country girl who wasn't a new graduate. As we enjoyed the fancy dishes, Kyle, who had just become my fiancé, and I reminisced about old times. "Wow. Why did you change to working at a library? Was it because of work relationships?" "Well, everyone got along pretty well, but the company was really tough." "Yeah, I can see that. Suddenly coming to New York, you wouldn't know which companies are bad." "Exactly. Plus, back then, I didn't even realize it was what they call a toxic company. I just got worked to the bone, but I thought that was normal in the city. It's scary how you get used to things." At the time, I was desperate for any job that would hire me. I was running out of money because of moving expenses and funeral costs, so I needed to start earning as soon as possible. Compared to back home, the salaries here were higher, and the trains ran more frequently, so I thought I wouldn't miss my chance and get stuck without a way to get home. But the reality was not that simple. I finally got hired by a company, but every day I had to take the first train in and the last train out. I only got a 30-minute break for lunch, and leaving the office during work hours was, of course, forbidden. I saved money, but I had no time to spend it. At first, I genuinely thought that was normal. That sounds tough. But why did you decide to become a librarian? I already had my librarian certification from college. But when I moved here, the library was too far away, so I gave up. But then I took the plunge, quit my job, moved, and luckily got re-employed. Wow. Was there a particular reason that made you quit? There was an elderly woman crouching in front of an eye clinic. I helped her get to the station, but I was late for work and got severely reprimanded. The manager vented all his stress on me, yelling not just about my lateness, but also that I was always slow at work and my clothes were sloppy. The manager's face from that day still haunts me. That's awful, especially since you were helping someone. Exactly. That's when I realized this company was no good, and I handed in my resignation that day. That's impressive. I respect that kind of decisiveness. Thanks to that, we were able to meet, so I'm grateful. True. I hope that elderly lady is doing well. Since changing jobs and starting work at the library, my life has changed dramatically. I have proper days off and can even take paid leave. The people at work are very kind and taught me patiently, even though I was a newbie. The salary was less than what I earned at the company, but I was so happy to be surrounded by books I loved and felt a great sense of fulfillment. While working at that wonderful library, I met Kyle, who was looking for a book, and we hit it off. After several dinners together, we started dating. I'm truly grateful for the books that brought us together. Oh, by the way, I want to visit my mom's house and report the news. Are you free next Sunday? Sure. Okay. I'll let her know. She's a bit strict, but she's not a bad person. She'll accept you, so don't worry. Thanks. Could you tell me what she likes? Sure. Let's go shopping together. Oh, and maybe you could give her a recommended book as a gift? That's a great idea. We continued to chat about trivial things while enjoying the dishes that kept coming. The food and wine were delicious, and I might have drunk a bit too much. But I'll always remember the filled-out marriage certificate Kyle handed me at the end. I hope these happy days will last forever. Time passed, and today is the day we're going to visit his mom's house. I'm a bit nervous as it's our first meeting. I woke up earlier than usual and made sure to dress neatly. Welcome, you too. Thanks for coming all this way. Thanks, Mom. This is my wife, Hannah. Nice to meet you. I'm Hannah. I look forward to getting to know you. A kind-looking woman greeted us at the entrance and quickly told me to raise my head when I bowed, then guided us inside. So, Hannah, what do you do? I felt reassured by the small talk about where I was from and my hobbies, but the question changed the atmosphere slightly. She works as a clerk at a library. Oh, at a library. I see. Is something wrong? Well, it's not bad, of course. But... I could tell her face clouded a bit. I hadn't expected her to comment on my job, and my palms started to sweat. I'll be frank, Hannah. You know how expensive living in New York can be, right? So I'm just a bit worried about the financial aspect. Is that job really the best choice? She spoke sharply, though she seemed apologetic. I understood her concern. When considering the future, it's natural to want a daughter-in-law who can earn a good living. Yes, I have no intention of changing jobs. But I answered firmly. I felt that if I didn't convey my thoughts to Mia now, I would never be able to truly call her my MIL. It was scary, but she was Kyle's mother, and I believed she would understand. I responded confidently, trusting she would accept me. I used to work in a toxic environment, but I changed jobs to become a librarian. I believe this job brings happiness to people through books. I've never found a job as fulfilling as this one. That's right, Mom. We met at the library where Hannah works. Books brought us together. I'll earn the money, so don't worry. Kyle supported my opinion, reinforcing my words. I take great pride in this job. If we ever need more money, I'm willing to take on a part-time job or whatever it takes. That's how much I want to continue this work. Though my tone was a bit strong, I boldly expressed my current thoughts. Mia's face was serious, but she nodded deeply. I see. Hannah, I lost my husband and raised Kyle on my own. I can't give him up easily. So, I want you to prove over time that you are a worthy person. Of course. I answered loudly with a smile. The tension in the room immediately eased, and we began normal conversation. Relieved, both Kyle and I relaxed our shoulders. The more we talked, the more I realized how family-oriented Mia was. Mia's house was in a neighboring state, so we wouldn't be living together, but I decided to build a good relationship with her. 15 years have passed since then, and as promised, we regularly visit Mia's house. At first, she seemed strict, but every time I brought her a book, she was delighted and shared her thoughts. Before we knew it, we started holding regular tea parties and book discussions. For a book lover like me, it was the perfect way to relax, and it was also a great way to get closer to my MIL. I had to thank Kyle for his suggestion of giving books. However, lately, I haven't been able to talk much with Kyle. Our marriage started as a dream come true. Kyle was the ideal husband, kind and considerate, helping me forget the loneliness of losing my parents. He helped with housework and surprised me with bouquets on special occasions. Every day was filled with happiness. But over the past few years, that has changed. It's natural for the initial excitement to fade over time, but Kyle's neglectful side has become more noticeable. We used to hang the laundry together, but now he leaves it all to me. He doesn't even put his clothes in the washing machine or turns his socks inside out. When I point it out, he just says, "It's a hassle. If you don't like it, do it yourself." He stopped cleaning his dishes, ignored the doctor's advice on his diet, and started criticizing the healthy meals I made. "Kyle, aren't you being a bit cold?" I sighed at the sight of the uneaten food on his plate. I had planned the menu to address his iron and calcium deficiencies. He used to praise my cooking. "Is that so? You come home late and don't eat properly. What are you trying to say? Do you think I'm just a convenient maid?" I lowered my voice, asking seriously. In the beginning, he said it was natural for us to do housework together as a married couple, but now he does nothing. If I didn't cook dinner, he'd get angry and go out. Trying to manage housework while keeping Kyle in a good mood was quite stressful. I was fed up. "I don't think that at all." "Then what's with your recent attitude? I'm not just here for your convenience." "You think I see you that way? Ridiculous. I try to show you my love, but if you can't feel it, fine." "Love? I don't feel that at all." "You should be grateful. It's because of my salary that we live in this nice house. Don't complain." With that, Kyle went back to his room. I knelt down and took a deep breath, trying to calm the surge of emotions. This kind of thing had become a daily occurrence. Whenever I pointed something out, he'd twist it around and make it seem like I was at fault. We didn't even sleep in the same bed anymore. Swallowing the words "I'm suffering" that were about to escape my lips, I started cleaning up the leftover food. I wished that the running water could wash away my fatigue as well. Thinking that, I washed the dishes alone in silence. A few days later. It's a weekday, but the library is closed, so I have the day off. Since the weather was nice, I decided to visit my MIL and invite her for a walk. She readily agreed, and we were walking through the neighborhood park, enjoying the pleasant sunlight, when Kyle called. "Hannah! It's terrible! Mom has collapsed." "What? Your mom?" What was Kyle talking about? My MIL was right next to me. "Yeah. So, I've decided to go back to check on her for a while." "Oh, I see." While I was confused, my MIL smiled and said, "Keep it a secret," putting her finger to her lips so Kyle couldn't hear. The sudden change in atmosphere almost made me speak out loud. "Yeah, but don't worry about it, Hannah. You have work, and calls might stress her out, so don't bother." "I see. But don't you have work too, Kyle?" "It's an emergency with my mom." "Of course, I'll take time off to go." "I see. When will you be back home?" "I'll be back by next Tuesday night." "Bye." Kyle hung up hurriedly. I clutched my phone and stared at the ground. Seeing my bewilderment, my MIL gently covered my hand with hers. "I'm sorry, Hannah. Leave the rest to me." My heart, which had been pounding loudly, calmed a little with her words, and I went home as she suggested. Since then, my MIL and I stayed in regular contact, preparing various things. The days passed, and on Tuesday night, as promised, Kyle came home. "I'm back." "Welcome back. How's your mom doing?" "Well, she's not doing so well. I'll need to check on her from time to time. So, I might not be able to come home often." "Really? Is it that serious?" Kyle sat on the couch, looking serious. I exaggerated my surprise. "Yes. There might not be much time left to spend with her, and I want to cherish it. Do you understand?" "Of course. Actually, I want to go too." "No, it should be just the two of us. It's our last parent-child time." Besides, at first, my mom didn't think too well of you, right? That's... My voice trembled. Kyle muttered, "What a problem," as he picked up his phone. Seeing that, I finally couldn't hold it in and started laughing, clutching my stomach. Ha! Kyle, you're the best. What? Hannah, how can you laugh when I'm saying my parent is critically ill? What kind of nerve do you have? Kyle tossed his phone aside and stood up, angrily approaching me. I held up my hand to stop him and opened the door to the adjacent room. Who's critically ill? Ha! Mom! Why are you here? It was my MIL herself who emerged. Kyle's legs gave way, and his face turned pale at the sight of her. On the contrary, my MIL stormed towards Kyle with a fierce expression. What have you been doing this past week? What do you mean? As you can see, I'm perfectly healthy. So what have you been doing? Well... Kyle averted his eyes and mumbled. Of course, he couldn't lie any longer with his super healthy mother standing right there. Hannah, what's going on? Did you call my mom? I told you not to because it would stress her out. Unable to say anything else, Kyle turned his anger towards me. But I wasn't afraid, as the situation was completely in my favor. You see, when Kyle called, I was on a walk with her. I showed Kyle my chat history with my MIL. It clearly showed our conversation about me inviting her for a walk since it was a day off from the library, and her cheerful acceptance. So, it was obvious from the start that you were lying, Kyle. What? But why? You two weren't that close. She even complained about your low salary at first. That was just at the beginning. I asked those questions to test Hannah. What? Hannah, even after hearing such things, still brought me recommended books and invited me out. Unlike you, who never came home. My MIL spoke in an exasperated tone, and Kyle retorted. I didn't know that. Why didn't you tell me? I did at first. But lately, you haven't wanted to talk to me. I had no intention of hiding it initially, but Kyle's reluctance to listen backfired on him. Had he known about my connection with MIL, this might not have happened. Kyle looked down, full of regret. His phone vibrated, but he was too distressed to care. Remember when I told you about helping an old lady in front of an eye clinic and how it led to my job change? Maybe. That was me. The world is small, isn't it? This was the biggest event that brought my MIL and me closer. While chatting during a tea party, when I mentioned the story, she suddenly exclaimed, "That was me," with wide eyes. My MIL had a complicated eye condition and came to New York for surgery. After the surgery, she got lost, and I was the one who helped her. Due to the surgery, her vision was still blurry, so she couldn't see my face clearly then. When she saw my face now and heard the story, she confirmed it. I'm so glad to have met the girl who helped me again. That's why we're so close now. I was so exhausted then that I didn't notice faces well. I've always wondered if you got home safely. Thanks to you, I did. Though, now my son seems to think I'm a critically ill patient. Maybe he should be the one getting an eye surgery. Usually, Kyle would try to dominate the conversation with me, but he couldn't stand up to his mother. He seemed to want to say something, but no words came out. At that moment, the door to the next room opened again, and a woman's voice called out, "Kyle." What, Kate? Good evening. Nice to see you again, Kyle. Kate smiled sadly and faced Kyle. Kate was a bit younger than me, with delicate features and a slender figure that looked great in her floral dress. Seeing her shoulders shake slightly, I felt a protective urge. I could see why Kyle might fall for her. Why is Kate here? After we said goodbye yesterday, I went home and found these people there. They told me everything. You're married, aren't you? How did? I hired a private investigator. They found out everything in this past week. Right after Kyle hung up a week ago, MIL sent me home and went straight to the private investigator. No matter the cost, I need you to investigate my son's affair immediately. They quickly gathered evidence and identified Kate's home, allowing them to contact her. Kyle, you were close to my parents, weren't you? They're furious. And so am I. I came here today to settle things. According to the investigation, Kate was a business partner of Kyle's company, and they had fallen for each other at first sight, as she told me. Kate didn't know Kyle was married and apologized deeply, saying she would never have gotten involved if she had known. Her parents, who were considering Kyle for marriage, were enraged when they learned the truth and apologized sincerely to me. Even though Kate and her parents weren't at fault, seeing them apologize pained me, and my anger towards Kyle grew. So I also apologized to the three of them and suggested they come today. So, your affair is fully exposed. I'll give you the lawyer's contact information later. What are you? How are you planning to live without me? Prices have skyrocketed compared to the past. You can't survive on your salary alone. Kyle glared at me, almost lashing out in anger. Feeling a bit tense, Mal stepped between us. Actually, I've started something. With that, Mal showed a screen on her phone to Kyle. What is this? I recently started investing in real estate. It's been incredibly profitable. So the cost of the private investigator wasn't a big deal. The screen showed a rate graph. Having studied a bit, Mal's investments were hugely successful. Of course, I helped her using the knowledge I gained from college and my love of books. By now, her income easily surpassed Kyle's salary. So you don't need to worry about our finances. You should be more concerned about the alimony you'll have to pay, which will leave you broke. Alimony? That's ridiculous. No, it's perfectly reasonable given your affair. You'll pay both Kate and me. Kyle muttered, this can't be, but then smirked as if he'd thought of something. Well, too bad, Hannah. I have my mother's inheritance. Sure, I'll pay the alimony, but I'll quickly get back to my old lifestyle. Good grief. How did he end up being so foolish? Mal, watching Kyle's grand declaration, put her hand on her head in exasperation. I couldn't agree more. Mom, it's okay, right? It's a major issue for your son. Please. Kyle, you are my precious son. But I didn't raise you to be so inhumane. What? I'm disowning you. Live on your own from now on. What? What about the inheritance? I'm thinking of giving it to Hannah. I blurted out, what, in surprise. I knew Mal was considering disowning him, but she hadn't mentioned the inheritance. Knowing she valued me so highly made me tear up with joy, having lost my own parents. Hannah, if you're willing, would you like to become my real daughter? Her words warmed me to my core. It was what I had longed to hear. I've been lonely ever since my parents died. Are you sure about this? Of course. From now on, let's be together. Mal, no, Mom, opened her arms wide and faced me, so I jumped in without hesitation. Ah, the warmth of a mother after so long. Today is the worst day of my life, but also the best day of my life. Seeing us, Kyle shouted, that's a lie. So, Hannah, this was your plan all along? You got close to me for my mom's inheritance and tricked her. Kyle, red with anger, lashed out at me. I calmly responded, you're reaping what you sow. I felt all the frustration I'd built up over the years suddenly lift. From now on, I'd live freely with Mom, unbound by Kyle. By the way, this has been ringing for a while. Here. Kate handed Kyle his still vibrating phone. Kyle answered angrily, and a man's furious voice yelled, you're fired. Trouble with a business partner, marriage fraud, that's a mistake. Kyle, pale, desperately tried to explain, but the call ended abruptly. Powerless, Kyle stared at Kate, who smiled gently. Kate, you're on my side, right? Kyle reached out to her like a drowning man, but Kate pushed his hand away. Kyle, I was once trapped by a terrible man and divorced him. I thought I could finally be happy with you. Kate. But you were just the same. I reported you to the company. Goodbye. With that, Kate headed towards the door. Mom followed her. I handed Kyle the divorce papers I'd filled out, left the house, and faced what was probably his utter despair. Surprisingly, the divorce went through quickly, as Kyle seemed to have surrendered. After receiving alimony, Mom and I moved to an apartment to avoid any further encounters with Kyle. I heard through the grapevine that Kyle struggled to find another job. It was only natural since we'd spread the word about his bad reputation, making it hard for him to work in the same industry. I hoped he was living in poverty by now. Good morning, Mom. Good morning, Hannah. It's a beautiful day. Shall we have a picnic in that big park today? Sounds wonderful. Let's make some sandwiches to take along. Mom and I lived peacefully in our apartment. We studied real estate investment together and frequented the library. On weekends, we went out, shared book reviews, and enjoyed a slow-paced life. Our investments continued to succeed, and Mom's savings kept growing. Living with my beloved books and my beloved mom, I am truly happy now.